The dark forests hold dangerous secrets that many dare not uncover. Among these secrets lurk some of nature's most formidable predators, bears. While they may seem majestic and awe-inspiring from a distance, up close, they can be deadly. In this video, we delve into some of the most harrowing and terrifying bear attacks ever told. The first story takes us to the dense forests of Colorado, where serenity and danger intertwine. In the fall of 2023, a woman named Emily, seeking solace and strength after a recent breakup, embarked on a fitness journey that led her to a horrifying encounter with a bear. This is the story of Emily's fight for survival against one of the wild's most formidable creatures. Emily had always been someone who found peace in nature. After her breakup with her long-term boyfriend, she decided to focus on herself and reclaim her life. Her best friend, Sarah, had been her rock through the heartache, encouraging her to take up running. It was Sarah who suggested the beautiful trails of Pinewood Park, a sprawling woodland haven just outside Denver, Colorado. That morning, Emily laced up her running shoes, her heart heavy but filled with determination. Sarah waved her off with a smile, shouting words of encouragement. Emily smiled back, her spirits lifting slightly as she jogged into the forest. The early morning sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the path ahead. The forest was alive with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. Emily felt a sense of calm washing over her, the rhythmic pounding of her feet on the dirt trail grounding her thoughts. As she ran deeper into the woods, she felt a strange mixture of liberation and loneliness. She pushed herself harder, her mind drifting back to the conversations with Sarah about finding strength and peace in solitude. It was then she saw it, a majestic grizzly bear not too far off the trail, rummaging through the underbrush. Her heart pounded, but instead of turning back, curiosity got the better of her. This was a moment she wanted to capture, a testament to her newfound bravery. She pulled out her phone and began to walk backwards, trying to frame the perfect shot. The bear, initially oblivious to her presence, suddenly looked up. Its dark eyes locked onto hers, and an uneasy silence filled the air. Emily froze, the gravity of her mistake dawning on her. She had wandered too close, and the bear's posture shifted from curiosity to threat. The bear performed a bluff charge, stopping just short of her, a warning she failed to heed. For a split second, Emily stood paralyzed with fear, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. She turned and ran, adrenaline surging through her veins. But the bear was faster, its powerful strides closing the distance. She stumbled, the world around her a blur of green and brown. The bear was upon her in moments, its massive paws striking her with a force that sent her crashing to the ground. The pain was excruciating, but survival instincts kicked in. She tried to shield herself, her screams piercing the tranquility of the forest. The bear's growls were deafening, each swipe and bite a brutal reminder of nature's unforgiving power. Emily's vision blurred, her consciousness fading. Miraculously, the bear paused. Emily lay still, her body unable to muster any more strength to fight or scream. The bear sniffed around her, its hot breath fanning over her. Then, as suddenly as it had attacked, the bear turned and lumbered away, perhaps thinking she was already dead. Emily lay there, every breath a struggle. The forest around her felt eerily quiet, the only sounds her ragged breathing and the distant rustle of leaves. She tried to stay conscious, clinging to the faint hope that someone would find her. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly until finally she heard footsteps approaching. A park ranger, alerted by the distant sound of her screams, had been searching the area. He found her lying motionless on the ground, her body battered and bloodied. He quickly assessed her injuries, noting multiple lacerations and fractures, including a deep gash on her leg and severe claw marks across her back. The ranger administered first aid, applying pressure to her wounds to stop the bleeding, and called for immediate medical assistance, requesting an airlift due to the severity of her injuries. The sound of sirens broke the forest's silence, paramedics rushing to the scene. An airlift was arranged. As the helicopter sped away, Emily's thoughts drifted to Sarah. She had set out that morning seeking strength, and though the day had taken a horrific turn, she realized she had found it. In the face of unimaginable terror, she had fought to survive. In the days that followed, an investigation into the attack began. Wildlife experts determined that the bear was likely a mother protecting her nearby cubs, which explained the sudden aggression. Emily's injuries were severe. She had suffered multiple lacerations and fractures, requiring several surgeries and a long period of rehabilitation. Despite the trauma, she was grateful to be alive, knowing that her quick thinking and the timely intervention of the park ranger had saved her life. The next story takes us to the awe-inspiring Yellowstone National Park, a place where the raw beauty of nature meets its untamed power. In the summer of 2019, a couple named Anna and Tom embarked on a nature getaway they had dreamed about for years. They sought tranquility and adventure, but what awaited them was beyond their wildest nightmares. This is the story of Anna and Tom's terrifying encounter with one of nature's most fearsome creatures. Anna and Tom had always shared a love for the outdoors. Their relationship was built on shared adventures, each one bringing them closer together. They had talked for years about visiting Yellowstone National Park, a place renowned for its breathtaking landscapes and abundant wildlife. When they finally arrived, the park did not disappoint. Towering pine trees, serene lakes, and majestic mountains filled their days with awe and wonder. Their first few days in Yellowstone were everything they had hoped for. They hiked through lush forests, stood in awe at the geysers, and camped under a sky brimming with stars. Each night, they would sit by the campfire, enjoying the sounds of the wilderness and the comforting crackle of burning wood. Little did they know, their serene escape was about to take a terrifying turn. On the fourth night of their trip, Anna and Tom decided to camp in a more remote area of the park, seeking solitude and a deeper connection with nature. As they set up their campsite, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the forest. They enjoyed a simple dinner and sat close to the fire, sharing stories and dreams for the future. As night fell, an eerie stillness settled over the forest. The usual sounds of wildlife seemed to fade into silence, and a feeling of unease began to creep over Anna. She couldn't shake the sense that something was watching them, lurking just beyond the reach of their campfire's light. She mentioned her feelings to Tom, but he reassured her, attributing it to the isolation and darkness of their remote campsite. Hours passed, and they decided to call it a night. They doused the fire, climbed into their tent, and drifted off to sleep, unaware of the danger that was closing in on them. The silence of the forest was suddenly shattered by a low, guttural growl. Anna jolted awake, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear heavy footsteps circling their tent, accompanied by the sound of sniffing and huffing. Anna urgently shook Tom awake. He groggily sat up, listening intently. The sounds grew closer, more ominous. Without a word, he reached for the flashlight and unzipped the tent slightly, peering into the darkness. The beam of light caught the reflective eyes of a massive grizzly bear, just a few feet away from their tent. Fear surged through them both. They knew they had to remain calm and not provoke the bear, but panic was hard to suppress. The bear began to paw at the tent, its powerful claws tearing through the fabric. Anna and Tom scrambled to the far side, trying to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the bear. Tom grabbed their bear spray, a crucial part of their safety gear. He unzipped the tent fully and aimed the spray at the bear, hoping to drive it away. The bear hesitated, blinking against the mist of the spray, but it wasn't enough to deter it completely. It roared in anger, swiping at Tom and knocking the canister from his hand. Anna screamed as the bear lunged forward, its massive jaws snapping inches from Tom. In a desperate bid to protect him, she grabbed a nearby branch and swung it at the bear, hoping to create a distraction. The bear turned its attention to her, giving Tom a chance to reach for another canister of bear spray they had packed. With a renewed sense of determination, Tom sprayed the bear directly in the face. This time, the bear retreated, shaking its head and growling in frustration. It backed away slowly, finally disappearing into the darkness of the forest. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the labored breathing of Anna and Tom. Shaken and injured, they knew they couldn't stay at their campsite. They quickly gathered their essentials, adrenaline fueling their movements, and made their way back to the main trail. Every rustle in the bushes, every crack of a twig sent waves of fear through them, but they pressed on, driven by the need to reach safety. They had left their phones behind to fully immerse themselves in the wilderness, a decision they now regretted deeply. As they stumbled through the darkness, they screamed for help, their voices echoing through the silent forest. After what felt like hours, they finally stumbled upon a park ranger patrol. Exhausted and terrified, they recounted their ordeal. The rangers escorted them back to safety, ensuring they received medical attention for their injuries. Anna had deep gashes on her arms from the bear's claws, and Tom suffered a severe bite on his leg. Despite their pain and shock, they were grateful to be alive. The rangers' timely intervention had likely saved their lives. The next story takes us to the majestic Rocky Mountains, a region where tranquility and peril walk hand in hand. In the summer of 2017, a seasoned hiker named Tom Larson set out on what he believed would be a peaceful solo journey. Unbeknownst to him, this hike would transform into a terrifying struggle for survival. This is the story of Tom's confrontation with one of nature's most fearsome predators. Tom Larson was a man who lived for adventure, a devoted father and husband. He balanced his love for his family with a deep passion for the wild. Every time he set out on a new expedition, he carried their love with him like an invisible shield against the unknown. That fateful summer morning, Tom kissed his wife goodbye, promising to be back in a few days with stories to tell and pictures to show. His daughters, their eyes wide with admiration, waved enthusiastically as he drove off, their innocent faces a reminder of everything he held dear. The sky was clear as Tom embarked on his hike, the crisp mountain air invigorating his spirit. He marveled at the beauty around him, the towering pines, the vibrant wildflowers, and the distant peaks bathed in sunlight. Each step felt like a journey deeper into his own soul, a connection to the earth that grounded him. As the day wore on, Tom followed a narrow trail that led to a secluded riverbank. He was in awe of the untouched beauty, the kind that seemed to exist only in dreams. While he was preparing to set up camp, a movement caught his eye. Across the river, a massive bear was foraging, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Tom's heart raced with a mix of excitement and apprehension. He had always wanted to photograph a bear in its natural habitat, and this was his chance. He moved slowly, his camera ready, trying to capture the perfect shot without disturbing the animal. But the wind shifted, carrying his scent towards the bear. The animal lifted its head, sniffing the air, and its eyes locked onto Tom. The moment stretched into eternity as Tom realized he had ventured too close. The bear's demeanor changed instantly from curiosity to aggression. It growled, a deep, resonant sound that sent shivers down Tom's spine. He reached for his bear spray, his hands trembling. The bear charged, its powerful limbs propelling it forward with terrifying speed. Tom aimed the bear spray and unleashed it, a cloud of deterrent meant to stop the bear in its tracks. But something went wrong. The spray sputtered and failed, a defective canister in the most crucial moment. Desperation took hold, and in a moment of primal instinct, Tom growled back, trying to assert his presence, but it was no use. The bear was upon him in seconds. Tom tried to run, but the beast was too fast. It swiped at him, its claws tearing through his clothing and flesh. Pain exploded through his body as he stumbled and fell. The world became a blur of agony and fear as the bear mauled him, its raw power overwhelming. In those final moments, he thought of his wife and 2 daughters. He thought of the life they had built together, the love that had filled their home. He fought with everything he had, not just against the bear, but against the darkness closing in around him. But it was a battle he could not win. When he did not return home, his wife's worry grew into dread. Authorities were alerted, and a search party was organized. Days later, they found his body, a tragic testament to the ferocity of nature. The investigation that followed revealed the faulty bear spray, a grim detail that added to the heartbreak. It was meant to be his protection, but in his moment of need, it had failed him. The forest, once a place of solace and wonder, had become a scene of unimaginable loss. Tom Larson's story is a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between man and nature. The next story takes us to the picturesque but perilous forests of Vermont. In the spring of 2015, a young college student named Alex decided to embark on a familiar trail to clear his mind after a heartbreaking breakup. Little did he know, this walk would turn into a chilling encounter with one of nature's fiercest predators. This is the story of Alex's struggle for survival. Alex had always found solace in nature. The dense forests of Vermont, with their towering trees and tranquil ambience, had been his refuge since childhood. But today was different. His heart was heavy with the weight of a recent breakup, a relationship that had ended abruptly and painfully. He had hoped this walk would clear his mind, offering a brief escape from the relentless thoughts that plagued him. As he stepped onto the familiar trail, memories of happier times with his ex-girlfriend flooded his mind. The laughter, the shared secrets, the dreams of a future together, all now seemed like distant echoes. With each step, Alex tried to push these thoughts away, focusing instead on the rhythmic crunch of leaves beneath his boots and the soothing hum of the forest. The trail was one he had walked countless times before. He knew every twist and turn, every tree and rock. It was a place that felt safe, almost like home. So, when he came across the bear area signs, he barely gave them a second thought. Bears had never been a concern during his previous hikes. Today, he reasoned, would be no different. Lost in his thoughts, Alex pulled out his phone and put on his headphones, letting the music drown out the silence of the forest. The melodies seemed to match his mood, melancholic and introspective. He walked on, oblivious to the subtle signs of danger around him. As the trail wound deeper into the forest, the trees grew denser, their shadows merging into a thick, dark canopy overhead. The air grew cooler, the sunlight barely piercing through the leaves. Alex's phone buzzed, and he glanced down to see the dreaded low battery warning. With a sigh, he dismissed it, hoping the battery would last just a bit longer. But within minutes, his music stopped abruptly. He pulled out his phone again, only to see the screen go black. Frustration bubbled up inside him. The silence that followed was deafening. Without the music, every sound of the forest seemed amplified. The rustling leaves, the distant calls of birds, and a faint, unfamiliar noise. At first, Alex thought it was his imagination, a trick of his unsettled mind. But the sound grew louder, more distinct. It was a rustling, accompanied by the occasional snap of a twig. His heart began to race. He scanned the trees around him but saw nothing. Still, an uneasy feeling settled over him. Pushing aside his anxiety, Alex decided to quicken his pace. The sooner he was out of the dense part of the forest, the better. But as he rounded a bend, he came to an abrupt halt. There, not more than 20 feet away, stood a massive bear, its dark eyes locked onto his. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Alex's mind raced, his body frozen in place. The bear was enormous, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its fur. It stared at him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Panic surged through him, and without thinking, he turned and ran. Every survival instinct screamed at him to keep going, to put as much distance as possible between himself and the bear. He could hear it crashing through the underbrush behind him, its growls echoing in the stillness of the forest. His breath came in ragged gasps, his legs burning with the effort of running. But no matter how fast he ran, the bear was faster. It closed the distance with terrifying speed, its snarls growing louder, more menacing. Just as he thought he couldn't run any longer, he tripped and fell, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through his body, but he scrambled to his feet, glancing back in sheer terror. The bear was almost upon him, its eyes wild with hunger. In that moment, Alex's mind flashed to all the things he hadn't done, the people he hadn't said goodbye to. The thought of dying alone in the forest was unbearable. But just as the bear lunged, something miraculous happened. An elderly woman, who had been hiking a different trail, heard the commotion and rushed towards the noise. She emerged from the trees, shouting and waving her walking stick. The bear, startled by the sudden appearance of another human, hesitated. It growled, its eyes flicking between Alex and the woman, before finally retreating into the forest. The woman hurried to Alex's side, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alex could barely speak, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He nodded weakly, collapsing onto the ground. The woman quickly pulled out her phone and called for help, her hands shaking. When the rescue team arrived, they found Alex barely conscious, his body battered and bruised but alive. The elderly woman's quick thinking had saved his life. As they airlifted him to safety, Alex's mind drifted in and out of consciousness. He knew he had come terrifyingly close to death, but he also knew he had been given a second chance. Alex sustained several severe injuries during the bear attack. His body was covered in deep gashes from the bear's claws, and he suffered a fractured arm and multiple ribs. The impact from his fall also left him with a concussion and significant bruising. His injuries were critical, leaving him barely conscious and in desperate need of medical attention. The bear, on the other hand, retreated back into the forest, continuing its life in the wild, a reminder of the untamed dangers that lurk in nature's beauty. The next story takes us to the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, a place where beauty and danger coexist. In the fall of 2023, a seasoned hiker named Mark embarked on what he thought would be a serene solo expedition. Mark had just been married, and with a newborn at home, he sought a weekend away from the noise to reconnect with nature. Little did he know, this hike would turn into a harrowing fight for survival. Mark had always been an adventurer at heart. He grew up exploring the trails near his home, and his love for the wilderness only deepened with age. His friends often marveled at his stories of solo hikes and close encounters with wildlife. To Mark, these adventures were a way to find peace, a retreat from the chaos of everyday life. In the weeks leading up to his expedition, Mark meticulously planned his route. He chose a remote section of the Pacific Northwest, known for its thick forests and rugged terrain. He packed his gear with precision, a sturdy tent, a well-stocked first aid kit, and enough food to last him several days. He also brought along a journal to document his thoughts and experiences, something he had done on every trip since he was a teenager. As he prepared to leave, he felt a pang of guilt. Their newborn daughter, Emily, was just a few weeks old, and he knew how much his wife, Sarah, depended on him. But Sarah understood Mark's need for solitude and reassured him with a smile, her eyes conveying both love and concern. The first day of Mark's hike was everything he had hoped for. The air was crisp, and the forest was alive with the sounds of nature. He followed a narrow trail that wound through towering pines and dense underbrush. As the sun set, he found a small clearing to set up camp. He cooked a simple meal over his portable stove and spent the evening writing in his journal, reflecting on his new life as a husband and father. Day 2 began uneventfully, but as Mark ventured deeper into the forest, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He dismissed it as paranoia and focused on the beauty around him. The landscape was breathtaking, with its moss-covered trees and the distant sound of a river. By midday, Mark decided to take a break near a stream. He sat on a rock eating a sandwich and watching the water flow by. Suddenly, he noticed movement in the water. A grizzly bear was fishing for salmon a short distance upstream. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Mark knew to keep his distance and remained as quiet as possible. After a few tense minutes, the bear caught a fish and wandered off into the forest. Mark let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He decided it was time to move on and carefully packed up his things. Just as he turned to leave, he heard a low growl behind him. He froze, his heart pounding. Slowly, he turned around to see another grizzly bear, much closer and far more agitated. Panic surged through Mark as he remembered the advice he had read about bear encounters. Stay calm, don't run, and try to appear non-threatening. He slowly backed away, avoiding direct eye contact. The bear, however, seemed intent on asserting its dominance. It stood on its hind legs, towering over Mark, and let out a deafening roar. Mark's instincts screamed at him to run, but he knew it would be futile. He tried to make himself appear larger and spoke softly, hoping to calm the bear. But the bear was not deterred. It dropped back to all fours and started moving toward him with alarming speed. In a desperate bid to save himself, Mark grabbed his backpack and swung it at the bear, hoping to scare it off. The bear swiped at the bag, sending it flying, and lunged at Mark. The force of the attack knocked him to the ground. He felt a searing pain as the bear's claws raked across his chest. Mark screamed, a sound that echoed through the forest, but there was no one around to hear. As the bear continued its assault, Mark's thoughts turned to his family. He pictured Sarah's face, her smile, and the way she looked at him with love and trust. He thought of Emily, so tiny and fragile, relying on him to be there as she grew up. Summoning the last of his strength, Mark managed to roll away from the bear and scramble to his feet. He knew he had to get to safety, but his body was failing him. Bloodied and barely able to move, Mark stumbled through the forest, each step an agonizing effort. He didn't know how long he had been walking when he finally collapsed. The pain was unbearable, and his vision blurred. His last thoughts were of his family, his love for them, and his regret that he wouldn't see them again. The next morning, a group of hikers found Mark's lifeless body. The hikers carefully collected Mark's belongings and carried his body back to civilization. News of Mark's tragic death spread quickly. Friends and family were devastated by the loss of a man who had always seemed invincible. Sarah held onto the journal as if it were a lifeline. His love for adventure, his dedication to his family, and his courageous final moments will forever be remembered by those who knew him. The next story takes us to the serene Appalachian Mountains, a place where peace and peril exist side by side. In the autumn of 2021, a young woman named Emma set out on what she anticipated would be a refreshing hike with her adventurous dog, Rex. They sought the solace of nature, but what awaited them was a test of their courage and survival instincts. This is the story of Emma's harrowing encounter with one of nature's most protective creatures. Emma had always felt a profound connection to the wilderness. Growing up, her family spent countless weekends camping and exploring the great outdoors. Now, at 30, with her loyal dog Rex by her side, she continued this tradition. Rex, a spirited Labrador mix, loved these excursions just as much as Emma did, and their bond grew stronger with each adventure. On a crisp October morning, the duo set out on a remote trail in the Appalachian Mountains. The air was filled with the earthy scent of fallen leaves, and the gentle rustling of the forest was music to Emma's ears. She felt a deep sense of peace as they ventured deeper into the wilderness, away from the chaos of everyday life. As they walked, the trail gradually narrowed and the trees formed a dense canopy overhead. Emma and Rex relished the solitude, each lost in their own world of discovery. They followed the path alongside a bubbling brook, the sound of the water adding to the tranquility of their hike. Little did they know, this peaceful journey was about to take a terrifying turn. Rex, ever curious and playful, suddenly perked up his ears and dashed off into the woods. Emma's voice echoed through the trees as she called after him, but Rex was already out of sight. Panic began to set in as she hurried after him, pushing through the underbrush and stumbling over roots. Her heart pounded in her chest as she desperately searched for Rex. The forest seemed to close in around her, the once soothing sounds now eerily quiet. Emma's desperation grew with each passing second, and she quickened her pace, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of her beloved dog. Then she heard it, a low, guttural growl that sent a chill down her spine. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. Ahead, she saw Rex, but he wasn't alone. Standing between him and Emma was a massive mother bear. Her cubs huddled behind her. The bear's eyes locked onto Emma, her growl a clear warning to stay away. Fear surged through Emma as she realized the danger they were in. She knew that mother bears were fiercely protective of their young, and any wrong move could provoke an attack. Emma slowly backed away, trying to appear non-threatening. She knew she had to get Rex out of there, but any sudden movement could trigger the bear's aggression. But Rex, sensing the tension, barked, and the bear's attention snapped to him. In an instant, The bear lunged forward, and Emma's world turned into a blur of motion and terror. The bear's massive paw struck Emma, sending her sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through her body as she tried to scramble away, but the bear was relentless. She felt its hot breath and the weight of its body pressing down on her. Emma's mind screamed at her to do something, anything to survive. With a surge of adrenaline, Emma reached for the bear spray in her backpack. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the canister, but she managed to point it at the bear and press the trigger. A cloud of spray hit the bear's face, causing it to roar in anger and pain. The bear reared back, giving Emma a moment to act. She crawled toward Rex, who was cowering nearby, and grabbed his collar. Emma's body screamed in pain, but she knew they had to move. She forced herself to her feet, dragging Rex with her as she stumbled through the forest. The bear, disoriented and enraged, hesitated for a moment before giving chase. Emma's vision blurred as she ran, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees a maze of shadows and fear. She could hear the bear crashing through the underbrush behind her, its growls a constant reminder of the danger they were in. Just when Emma thought she couldn't go on, she saw a rocky outcrop ahead. With the last of her strength, she scrambled up the rocks, pulling Rex with her. They collapsed on a ledge, the bear unable to follow them up the steep incline. Emma's body shook with exhaustion and pain, but they were safe for the moment. As the adrenaline began to fade, Emma felt the full extent of her injuries. Her body was battered and bruised, with deep scratches and bruises forming on her arms and legs. She knew she needed medical attention, but she also knew they had to get back to civilization first. Emma didn't have her phone with her, having always left it at home to fully immerse herself in nature. She relied on her determination and instinct to navigate back to the main trail. Each step was a struggle, but she refused to give up. The bond between her and Rex gave her the strength to keep going. When they finally emerged from the forest, Emma collapsed in relief upon seeing another hiker in the distance. She called out, her voice weak but urgent. The man hurried over, taking in the sight of Emma's injuries and the distressed dog by her side. Emma explained what had happened, and without hesitation, the man used his phone to call for an ambulance. Help was on the way, and they would both live to tell the tale. The tranquility of the trail was shattered, but Emma knew she had learned a valuable lesson about the unpredictable nature of the wilderness. In the aftermath of Emma's ordeal, wildlife officials launched an investigation into the incident. They discovered that the bear and her cubs had been frequenting the area due to an abundance of food sources, drawing them closer to popular hiking trails. This highlighted the increasing encounters between humans and wildlife. The investigation also revealed that Emma's use of bear spray likely saved her life, underscoring the importance of being prepared for such encounters. Emma's injuries, though severe, were treatable, and she made a full recovery with time. Signs were posted along the trails, warning hikers of recent bear activity and advising them on how to react if they encountered a bear. Emma's experience had not only taught her valuable lessons, but also contributed to the safety of others who would follow in her footsteps. The next story takes us to the remote forests of Alaska, a place where the rugged beauty of nature meets its untamed ferocity. In the fall of 2018, a seasoned bear hunter named Jack embarked on a solo hunting trip, seeking solitude and escape from his recent grief. He aimed to clear his mind after losing his beloved wife, Laura. This was more than a hunting trip. It was a journey to find peace. What he didn't anticipate was a life-and-death struggle that would test his every instinct. Jack had always felt at home in the wilderness. The Alaskan forest, with its towering trees and crisp, clean air, was a sanctuary where he could escape the pressures of everyday life. He had been hunting for years, a skill passed down from his father, and each trip was a homage to the man who taught him everything he knew. But this trip was different. Laura's death had left a void in his heart, and the solitude of the forest was his refuge from the overwhelming sorrow. The first day began with the sun rising over the horizon, casting a golden glow through the trees. Jack set up his camp near a bubbling stream, the sound of the water a soothing background to his activities. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, a symphony he had grown to love over his years as a hunter. As he built a small fire and prepared his dinner inside his tent, he felt a deep sense of peace. The isolation, the quiet. This was where he belonged. That night, Jack took a long sip from his flask, feeling the warmth spread through his chest. He pulled out a worn photograph of Laura, the edges frayed from being handled so often. The gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl lulled him into a deep, restful sleep, her memory his only comfort. At dawn, Jack awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He gathered his gear, double-checked his rifle, and ventured deeper into the forest. Hours passed as he tracked subtle signs of bear activity: broken branches, scattered tracks, and claw marks on trees. His heart pounded with anticipation as he moved stealthily through the underbrush, his senses heightened by the thrill of the hunt. Then, in a small clearing, he spotted it: a massive grizzly bear, foraging for food. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he steadied his rifle, aimed, and fired. The bear fell, and Jack's heart surged with triumph. He approached cautiously, ensuring the bear was truly down before taking a triumphant picture with his camera. His smile was wide, a testament to his victory. As he admired the photo, a sudden deafening roar shattered the silence. Jack barely had time to react as another bear, even larger, charged at him from behind. His heart leapt into his throat and adrenaline surged through his veins. He bolted, the camera slipping from his hands and landing in the dirt. The forest around him became a blur as he ran, the ground uneven and treacherous under his feet. The bear was relentless, its growls growing louder with each passing second. Jack's lungs burned and his legs grew heavy, but he pushed on, driven by sheer survival instinct. Desperation clawed at his mind as he realized he couldn't outrun the beast. He stopped, his body screaming for rest, and turned to face his pursuer. Gasping for breath, Jack locked eyes with the bear. In that moment, he knew it was over. He felt a strange calm wash over him, a resignation to his fate. His mind flashed through memories of Laura, their life together, and the love they shared. With a deep, steadying breath, he whispered his final prayer in his mind, asking for Laura to be taken care of until they met again. The bear's eyes reflected a primal rage as it closed the distance. Jack's world became a blur of pain and terror as the bear's claws tore into him. He felt each blow, each sharp bite, but his mind was far away, lost in the comforting thought of Laura's embrace. The darkness finally took him, and his last conscious thought was of love and peace. Days later, a search party found Jack's campsite. His belongings were scattered, a stark contrast to the orderly man they knew. Following the trail, they found him. His body lay near the tree where he had made his last stand. Beside him, his camera still functioned, displaying the triumphant photo he had taken just moments before his demise. The image was a haunting reminder of the fine line between victory and defeat in the wild. Jack's story serves as a testament to the unforgiving nature of the wilderness, where even the most experienced can find themselves at the mercy of its inhabitants. This was our last story. Thank you for tuning into these incredible animal attack stories. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on the most insane and horrifying attacks. Your subscription greatly supports us,